G'day friends, it's Andrew here from Nature's Image Photography, and I'm just back from the Great Migration Photography Tour in Tanzania, shooting with my brand new Panasonic Lumix GH6 and my trusty Panasonic Lumix G9. I have enough photos and footage to fill a dozen videos, so in this one I'm just going to give you a taste of what we saw, tell you a bit about the hands-on experience of touring with the two Lumix bodies, and give you some of my first impressions of the Lumix GH6. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe because there's plenty more on the way, and if you want to support my YouTube efforts, well, those coffees are always appreciated, and you can find the link in the information below. Tanzania can be a dusty old place, especially travelling in open vehicles on the Serengeti, so having decided to carry two camera bodies, I didn't want to have to change lenses any more than necessary. I kept the Leica 100-400 on the GH6. Being primarily a wildlife tour, I knew this would be my main lens, and I wanted to be hands-on with my new toy as much as possible. With a new 25 megapixel sensor, I believe the GH6 is the first Micro Four Thirds camera to break the 20 megapixel barrier. It also has 7.5 stops of image stabilization, making it a very good partner for a big telephoto lens. The GH6 also has Animal Detect Autofocus available on all of its AF area modes, making it well suited to being a bit of a wildlife workhorse. And that meant my Leica 12-60mm lens travelled on the G9, and it still had plenty of work to do. Even on a wildlife tour, there are still plenty of landscapes to photograph, and lots of wildlife opportunities that call for a wider lens. I even shot a few flowers around the Ngorongoro farmhouse, so I got to use the macro capabilities of the 12-60mm lens as well. The G9 has a 20 megapixel sensor and 6.5 stops of stabilization, making it incredibly stable, especially with a smaller lens like this. The G9 also has a great Animal Detect Autofocus, available as a standalone feature and also combined with the 1-point AF area mode. I have to say, I'm more than happy with my decision to travel with the two bodies combined with those two lenses. Having two cameras that can detect an animal even when there's a fair bit of interference made it an easy task to switch from close-up to a more landscape style of photo. Unlike my 2019 tour when I was swapping lenses every few minutes, this time round I could zoom in as close as possible on the GH6 and then pick up the G9 for an entirely different type of image from the same photo opportunity. That same versatility was just as useful for video shooting, and the two combos allowed me to capture different highlights of the tour in very different ways, and all without ever having to take a lens off the camera and risk letting in that Serengeti dust. Having said all that, there was one little quirk that tripped me up a few times. As regular viewers know, I started shooting with back button focus about a year ago. On the GH6, that's done using the AF on button. The trouble is the AF on button is right next to the AF area mode button, and the AF area mode is in exactly the same place and feels exactly the same as the button I use for back button focus on the G9. Now this is not a complaint, and it's certainly not a fault of either camera, just an odd little coincidence that meant when I quickly switched from the G9 to the GH6, I often hit the AF area mode by mistake when I tried to focus. Just a little something I'm going to have to get used to. So, little quirks aside, I want to tell you a bit about the hands-on experience of using the GH6 for still photography. And I really want to concentrate on the stills, because if I learned anything on this tour, it's that I still have an awful lot to learn about video. And since I only received the camera a few days before the tour, I really didn't have time to delve into a whole new learning curve. So while I did shoot some video in Tanzania, most of my work was with still photos. I only have one big negative to talk about, and that's battery life. The GH6 is rated to get up to 380 photos on a fully charged battery, which is not a lot, and I don't think I was even getting that many. I can easily shoot more than that on a half-day game drive. Compare that to the battery on the G9, which is rated for up to 400 photos, which is not much more, but after using the G9 and recharging that battery numerous times, the capacity built up, and now I can get over 1,000 photos to a battery. So I'm really hoping the capacity on the GH6 battery will improve over time as well. I took a spare battery, and that kept me out of trouble. I recommend anyone buying this camera gets at least one spare, and I plan to get a couple more before my next tour. Now, opinion is going to be divided about the weight of the GH6. A lot of people are commenting that this is a heavy camera, and it's about 170 grams more than the G9. If you specifically moved into Micro Four Thirds because you wanted something lightweight, then maybe this isn't the camera for you. But after bouncing around on dusty corrugated dirt tracks for a couple of weeks, I appreciate a camera that feels as solid as a rock. More important to me than the weight is the handling. The grip is so well designed it just feels great in my hand, and it feels really well balanced, especially when it's paired with an equally solid lens like the 100-400, so I have no problem with the weight. And now onto the list of things I really like, and I'll start with the menu. I thought the G9 menu was good. In fact, the user-friendly menu was on my list of reasons for buying it, but then I thought the new menu system on the full-frame cameras was even better, and that's the one they've put into the GH6. It's divided into sections and subsections, all very easy to understand and navigate. It's different to the G9 menu, but it still seems so familiar that you'll slip into the new menu system with no trouble at all. Next comes something that surprised me because I haven't seen it mentioned anywhere else, and that's the review screen. I think most people would agree that the electronic viewfinder on the G9 is superb, but when you review a picture and try to enlarge it in that camera, the resolution of the image breaks up and the pictures look soft. You don't really know how sharp your photos are until you load them onto the computer. Well, on the GH6 you can blow the photo up right to 8 times view without losing any clarity, and you lose almost nothing right up to 16 times view. Now I know that using one camera to video the back of another camera isn't the ideal way to demonstrate this, so take my word for it, the GH6 gives a much better experience when it comes to reviewing photos in camera, and that means more confidence in the sharpness of your photos. Now I'd like to really praise the colours I'm getting from the GH6. Shooting in RAW and using auto white balance, the G9 has always skewed a bit towards magenta, so every photo I want to share requires some level of colour correction. Well, I see no such issue on the GH6. I still shoot RAW and I still use AWB, but colours straight out of camera are much closer to reality. So of course I still have to edit my RAW files for contrast and clarity, etc., and that's the nature of shooting RAW. But the photos require little or no colour correction, and needless to say I'm very happy about that. And finally, because I'm sure you're ready for me to stop talking and show you some more photos, we come to image quality from that new 25 megapixel sensor on the GH6. As you know, I've always been happy with my results on the G9, and this camera takes that quality to the next level. The clarity of detail with all that extra resolution is quite noticeable, and when the animals are just a bit too far away, the photos can take quite a bit more cropping. I won't say the photos are noise-free at higher ISO, but the noise is certainly more manageable, and I wasn't so reluctant to put the ISO up higher as I might have been with the G9. I would have liked to do a few side-by-side comparisons where I took the same subject with the same lens on the two different bodies, but there simply wasn't time on tour, so that's something I might have to try at Australia Zoo in the near future. So now it's time to give you a proper taste of my Tanzania experience, shot through the G9 with 12-60mm lens and the GH6 with 100-400. I'll add the shooting info with each photo for your interest. I'm Andrew Goodall, this is Nature's Image Photography, thanks for watching.